Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Alright, we're going to do something that I did a little over a month ago, and that video went over really well and I love doing it. So I think it will be a series going forward that I do. And that is going to be talking about all the new releases I've read in the last month. In this case, it's in the last like 6 weeks because I didn't have a chance to do it for the month of November. So it's like November and then like this part of December basically. And so I'm going to be talking about, in this one, I think I have like 13 new releases, but that's about where we're at anyway. And these are all ones that I either read like within the week that they came out, or I had an arc of them. So these are going to be all of those. And the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it the way I did last time. And I'm kind of going to go from like least to most favorites, just because I think that it's fun. Although I'll tell you with this one, I only had one that was a 3-star. And everything else was like 4 stars or above, including 2 new 6-star reads that I added right near the end of the year, which is just fabulous. I love when that happens. So yeah, we're going to go through these and I will have links to all of them down below if you haven't tried them. But this is going to be telling you of the new releases that I've read, which ones do I think are worth your time. And I got to tell you, most of them were, for sure. So let's go ahead and dive in. So the one that I read in October, the very end of October or the beginning of November. I don't know. I can't even remember now. It was in November. That's right. All of these are November and December. That I cared for the least was Do Your Worst by Rosie Danan. So this one I was pretty much looking forward to. It's been, I think, over 2 years since Rosie Danan put out a book. And so I was eager for this one. I snagged an arc of this one as quickly as I could. And of course, then I put it off for a long time reading it. But this was supposed to be kind of a like Ghost Hunters meets like, what did they say? Like Ghost Hunters meets like an Indiana Jones type thing. I don't know. But we have a like archaeologist and a ghost hunter. And the archaeologist, he is there to, he's working on this project. He's trying to, put in some projects that will help raise his name in the academic world. And then we have a heroine who she's broke and she has skills as a ghost detector, a medium of some kind, and she is now trying to monetize that skill. So she ends up getting this job in Scotland. She's working at a cafe part-time there, as well as has this job. Now, her and this guy, they actually meet, I wish I had their names, but I don't care enough to look them up again. They meet the night before at like a pub in town and they almost have a one-night stand. They almost go home with each other, but something gets in the way. And then the next day, she walks up to the job site and hears him talking to the project head about like, you really hired a scam artist? Like, there's no ghosts here. Like, what are you talking about? And he's trying to get the guy to fire her as she's walking up. Now, she needs this job really badly. She needs the money. And so this immediately puts him now like on her shit list. And he is sorry when he sees it's her, but he's also like, you're a scammer. Like, I mean, I have compassion for you, blah, 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 blah. So this ends up being like them butting heads while having lots of sexual tension between them. But I just was so bored for so much of this story. There's not another way to say it. Do I know if it was good or bad? I can't completely tell you, but it was a snooze fest for me because it has that type of drama where it feels so childish. They're like back and forth, but also this wasn't a paranormal romance. So it's also like, well, are the ghosts fake? Like, I don't understand what this book, like where it was trying to go. There is points where he agrees to like believe her for a while to prove she's wrong. And there are some rituals they do to try to clear the evil spirits. And some of them involve sexual things. And he's like, sure, I'm up for it. I'll help you with those. So I don't know. It weirded me out a little bit. It did. And I didn't love it. So we'll move on from that one because we got better things to talk about. But I gave that one 3 stars. All right. Now we have quite a few 4 stars. I numbered them as number 2. They were 4 stars. That's just a 4-star. Mafia Virgin by Mila Finelli. So I just read this one. This one just came out. I did have an arc of this one. And I gotta say, as I said in my weekly review, this is my least favorite of the series. I've since talked with some of my friends who've read it as it came out, and they definitely helped me articulate why I wasn't feeling it as much. So this is the final one in this series. This is the final, like, sister who isn't with someone. And they are both forced into a marriage at the beginning of this. Fausto's Dawn and Giacomo's Dawn are, like, trying to force them into a marriage to, like, make peace. And they don't want that. And he doesn't want to be forced into a marriage. And she is taking care of her dying father in, I think it's in Canada, right? Is it in Toronto that they live? I think so. And she basically gets kidnapped and forced there. And then Giacomo, he has a loved one who is being threatened as well. So they both are forced into this because of their loved ones are under threat. And instead of them really choosing to work together with this, they turn all their anger on each other about this. And they are also given a timeline that they need to make sure that, her name just went out of my head. Is this one Gemma? This one is Gemma. That she's pregnant within 6 months. Because this baby, this heir that they'll have will be the peace deal. And in kind of a way too, I'm like, so you've made them both get married, but are you really think that forces peace? I don't know. In this case, I feel like usually at least one of the parties is in on the forced marriage. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. So they very much are very antagonistic towards each other. He is like, I have no room to bend. She was going to school to be a doctor, so she feels like all of that just got derailed from her. There was just the disappointment in this book really comes down to all the missed opportunities that happened again and again. There's the opportunity, because this is the final book, there's the opportunity that all of the family could have come together for this. And I'm sticking with this, okay? There is little excuses made in here that, like, oh, well, if I tell Fausto, he will just come in and, like, you know, he doesn't care about my dad, so he'll just come in and blow it all to pieces. And I'm like, your sisters are both married to mafia men. And we're just sweeping that away by saying, like, oh, well, they would get too involved and it would be bad. And I just don't buy it. Also, we have Fausto's new, like, son-in-law is an assassin. He's an assassin. Why didn't we just sick him on this guy and take him out? I don't know. We had so many tools in our tool bag that we have put together over the last 4 books, right? And we just, like, threw the tool bag out the window. And it was just these two trying to fake it till they make it and butting heads. And then all of a sudden, Giacomo was in love with her. Because he got some of that virgin pussy, he was in love with her. And I don't like that. So this was one that I will say, like, I gave this one 4 stars because I read an arc of it. But after talking it through and realizing why I was frustrated, because if you see my original review of it, I was just kind of like, well, number one, it wasn't out yet. So I was trying to be a little more, like, about it. Because it was very sexy. There are really some fun things about Gemma. That even though she's a virgin, very curious. The hero is pierced. The hero is very sexy, but he's a little too mean for me for a good portion of it. And very dismissive of her. And I'm like, the woman was going to school to be a doctor. Like, there was opportunities for her to use her skills, and she was just treated like a stupid woman. And I'm like, these were points where Giacomo could have stepped in and made her feel worthy at any point. I don't know. So, and then the reason I'm disappointed is, again, I compare it to other books in the same series. And there are points in the other books where once we realize we're, like, could be working together, we do that. And I feel like in this one, they were always working at cross purposes unless they were in the bedroom together. And I just didn't care for it. So yeah, this was a disappointing end to the series for me personally because of how strong books 2, 3, and 4 were for me, right? I didn't love Mafia Mistress, but I think I said in one of my videos that if I was rating these, I would rate this one, Mafia Virgin, about the same as Mafia Mistress. And then it was Mafia Darling, Mafia Madman, Mafia Target. I liked all those ones better. So I gave this one 4 stars, but it's probably like a 3.5. So all right, then I have a bunch of 4.5 stars. These are what I have a lot of. So there was Love Redesigned. This was me giving Lauren Asher, like, one last try because I was sent an arc by Bloom. I was sent an e-arc, and then I was sent a physical copy, which was great because I had read 2 books in the Dreamland Billionaires and I didn't like either of them. They were like 2 and 3 stars for me. I wasn't a fan of the heroes in those ones, but I read this one and I really liked the hero in this one. He is keeping a lot hidden inside. So these 2 are like Julian and Dahlia, and they were friends to rivals to lovers kind of thing. Like their mothers are good friends, and so they were always around each other when they were kids, and they had kind of like a crush going on. But when the heroine like made a move, he panicked. And also he lost his father, and when he loses his father was kind of when things were starting between them, and he like freaked out and just bailed out of it because he had too much other going on. So he really set them down a wrong path. And then while he was dealing with the stuff of his father's death, his roommate was there to help her, and she actually fell for his roommate then. And so the beginning of this book, she's actually getting out of that relationship with that roommate. They've been together for a long time, and she's going back home to visit. And now there's another layer to this too, because she's actually kind of famous. So this is a postcard they sent, like the home of Dahlia Munoz. So like she's like a local celebrity to them because she's on a show that's a little like the Gaines show. What is it? I don't know, but like a show on like the home improvement stuff or whatever. I've literally forgotten the name of all the things right now. And now they're broken up, so it's super awkward that they had to film like the last season of their TV show. And then our hero, he is a billionaire, and he is into like property and architecture and stuff. And so they end up working together on a project in their hometown during a period of time, and then they grow closer together. Now, as the one like kind of weakness for Lauren Asher's for me, why this isn't fully a 5-star, I didn't mind the slow burn between the 2 of them, right? Because we're not even just dealing with like an enemies to lovers or a friends to lovers. Like they were friends to like rivals / enemies, where like they used to have such a close relationship, and then he pushed her away. So not only are we now having to broach this again, where their families are friends and they're risking a lot, but they've already tried kind of once and it blew up on them. So when you're going to try again with this, it's harder to even do. Like it's harder to do. But he definitely is a pining hero. He's very stoic and like grumpy, but you can tell he has a deep well of like caring in him. And he does these like little things to care for her, but pretends like it's not a big deal, like that type of thing. So the weakness for me, like I said, I didn't mind that it was a slow burn between them, but this was still, what was this, like, yeah, over 500 pages, and it just could have been paced a little better, but I still wanted to be able to round it up to 5 stars because I loved it so much more than the other Lauren Ashers I read. So I gave this one 4.5 stars, and I really enjoyed this. I loved the diversity in this one. I loved the families in this, and I very much am looking forward to another book in this series. So I'm glad. This is why I try to give authors another chance. You know, the same with another author who's going to be on this list. Like, I'm glad that I gave another chance to this one because I was pretty much going to be like, I'm not going to read any more of hers. So definitely enjoyed that one. All right, another that I gave 4.5 stars to was Broken Dreams by Corinne Michaels. This one I remember clearly. I read this one over Thanksgiving. This was book 2 in the, I know the hero's name is Grady. What's the family name? Oh, I'm so bad at this. Whitlock. Whitlock is the family one. So this one I thought was super unique. It has 2 widow and widower characters. So, and they both have 3-year-old kids. So he has a little boy, she has a little girl. They're going to the same like nursery school together, and they meet when like he's moved back to the small town, she's in this new town, and they both are in like similar places. She's looking to date again and move on, and he's not. Like, he just wants it to be him and his son, but he needs a fake girlfriend to help him get a business deal. He's now ex-military, but he was a pilot, so he wants to use those skills to have like a private like plane business, but he needs some investing to get that initial like plane, you know, so that he will have a plane to ride people around in. And then also he moved back here after like he wanted to be there for his son, because when his wife died, he was still in active duty. And so his son for like 5-6 months while he finished his term was being raised by his in-laws and barely like knew him because he was so little as it is. And then to be gone during those times, like it was really tough. So it's him and his son, and they move home to Sugarloaf, and his family's all there, right? So one of his brothers was the hero from the first one, and then he has another brother and a sister, and they're all there to help. And what I loved in this one again was like, this one isn't necessarily found family because it is his family, but like that community coming around you to help with your kids, and the way that their two kids really were friends first. Like they just always wanted to be around each other and do stuff together. It was so great. So yeah, I loved this one. I gave it 4.5 only because I only knocked a half because the hero is just so stuck in that he cannot date. Like he doesn't have room to ever love again. And I just feel like he hadn't been like burned enough to be that like about it. You know what I mean? Especially when he's dealing with a heroine who has been through the same thing. Like, you know, it isn't just someone saying like, oh, I can't imagine what you've been through. Like she literally has. And they are walking the same journey. So they have a lot in common, but still for him, he just fights it a bit too much. But I'm very excited for the next one in this. I think the next one is like lost pieces, like I don't think it's broken pieces because this one had broken in it, but this one's going to be about, it's going to be enemies to lovers, and it's going to be the brother who's a dairy farmer. Yo, I'm from like dairy farm country, and I'm so excited about it. And the like farming and stuff is brought up a lot in this. There's a lot of animals mentioned in these, and so I can't wait for more. I'm really loving this series. The audiobooks are so good. So yeah, highly recommend this series by her. The first one I gave 5 stars for sure. So yeah, another one I gave 4.5 was If You Give a Grump a Holiday Wish List. So there's still time for you to read some holiday cheer. This one was from Anne Einerson. It's a little Christmas novella that's an office romance, and it's the assistant and the billionaire boss, and he comes home with her for Christmas because he's going to make her keep working during the holiday. He just has so much business to do. He's a bit of a Scrooge character, but he also is that character who like, he's been obsessed with his assistant for the whole 3 years she's worked for him, but he's like kept his distance because he knows it would be inappropriate if he made a move on her. But now that he's like staying in her like home with her for a few days, all of the things he's been repressing for all these years just kind of, he can't help it. And I'm here for it. Okay, I'm here for it. Okay, and then another one, the last one I gave 4.5 stars to mention was Howl for the Gargoyle by Catherine Moon. So this is the next book in the Monster Smash series. The first one was Games with the Orc. So this is about a monster like escort service. Okay, so we have monster sex workers in here. So in this one we have a gargoyle, and his name is Rafe. Yes. Oh, I got it. His name is Rafe. And he is getting a bit like jaded in the life. So because he's a gargoyle and he has impenetrable skin, doesn't mean it's impervious. Doesn't mean he doesn't ever get hurt, but like he can take a beating. So he gets assigned to clients who like are a bit more like violent, like not necessarily because they like want to hurt someone, but specifically there are like werewolves who are very horny when they are turned, but they would kill a human if they had sex with him. So he's worked with a lot of people like that. But he also isn't getting the best reviews because he's not super personable, which is very interesting. You know, some of the skills you need to have as a sex worker is like putting people at ease who are going to have sex with you, you know? But then we have our heroine who, she is actually a singer, and she was not too long ago bitten by a werewolf, and now she is one. And she's very much struggling not only with like her control, but she's very fearful of her werewolf self, and hasn't fully accepted it. And she has a friend who suggests to her that she try the Monster Smash agency. She gets a referral to them because she also, of course, is having the very horny feelings, but she has hurt men a couple of times before she knew her like full strength as a werewolf now. So she's very timid about it, but it's just causing all of this like, you know, strife with her and the wolf because she's not getting her needs met, and it just makes it all the more volatile. So she gets paired up with Rafe before the full moon. She wants to meet him before the full moon because she still is like, I could hurt him, and they're like, oh honey, you can't, it's fine. So she meets Rafe, and it's funny because he actually knows more about like werewolves during their sexy time than she does, because she hasn't really looked into it too much because she's afraid of it, right? And so he explains a lot of things to her. And so after they have just like a good old time together, she then books him for like 5 full moons in a row because she thinks that it's going to work well between them. So they start this relationship, and yeah, that's basically what this one is. And this one was really fun. This one has a lot of kinky stuff, just like the first one did. In this case, her like werewolf self is very like dominant. So there is a pegging scene in this one. There are butt plugs being used. There is some primal play in here. There's some bondage in here. This was just a whole lot of fun. And of course, like in the first one, once they start having more feelings than you should for your hired escort, they have to decide, you know, like, is it feelings I'm having for real, or am I just making them up because we're being intimate together, you know? And I enjoy that angst. It's why I do enjoy some romances with sex workers now and then. I've read quite a few. I think I know I have a recommendation video for sex workers as well. I'll put that up there. So yeah, really enjoyed that. I can't wait for more. I love Catherine Moon's books. I think she does very sexy books with really great emotion in them. I think she does that so well. So even though this is a more like erotic one, I still really felt for the couple. Like they were so cute. So yeah, highly recommend. All right, now we're already to the ones I gave 5 stars, and I gave a lot of books 5 stars. So let's go back again to the beginning. We'll go through these. So there was another novella I read. This one you could even consider a bit of a Christmas novella as well, which is Some Winter's Evening by Erin Langston. This is in the Forever Your Rogue series, and this one is about Gavin. So if you read Forever Your Rogue, Gavin is the brother to Cora. He's a barrister, and he's actually really like working on like his career. He's hoping to like move up within the ranks of that, and he gets assigned a case that he could really do very well at it, but he would feel it would compromise his morals if he did it, because it involves taking a mother from her children, I believe, which is like, he just helped his sister like keep her children. I believe I'm thinking of the right thing too. So it's like, this would do so much for his career, but like, what would it do for his heart? The heroine in this is the new governess, a new nursery governess for Cora and Nate's kids. And she is stopped at an inn because of bad weather before she's going to show up at the house, and she ends up staying at the same inn that Gavin gets stuck in, and there's only one room left. And so after some talking and stuff, they have kind of a misunderstanding where she like throws her drink at him because she thinks he's being fresh with her when really he wasn't. So then in gratitude, she like offers to have him come stay in her room with her, which then is like her definitely being very fresh with him. So they have a bit of a like semi-romantic interlude, like there's dancing and talking, but he doesn't want to like compromise her, and so he ends up like running out before they go all the way. And then the next day she shows up at her new job, and she gets there before he does, but he ends up being there then, and they're both there. And she talks to him and she's like, I need this job. Because the thing with a nursery governess is you're never there very long. She's also very pretty, which also makes mothers even like more like untrustworthy of her. And so she's never there very long, because once the kids move to needing a regular governess, she doesn't have enough schooling to teach past a certain age. So being a nursery governess is a very tough job and you end up moving a lot. So she needs this job with Cora and Nate. And so she's like, well, we're just going to pretend that we didn't know each other because I need this job. And he's like, I don't want to mess up your job. I don't want to do that. But during the Christmas holiday, it becomes clear to at least Nate that there's something going on with his brother-in-law and this woman. And he's like, you need to go for it because I haven't seen you like this at all. And so, yeah, it's the romance between these two. And I've already said enough because it's only a novella. But just one other tiny, teeny secret for you. This is a double virgins romance, just so you know. I love those. So this was so sweet. I can't wait for more from Erin Langston. I've now read all 3 of the books she has. 2 are novellas and 1 full, and I can't wait for more. I love them so much. All right, we have another monster romance that I adored. Was Hoarded by the Dragon by Lillian Lark. I love this series, and Lillian was so kind. I was commenting on, like, when she released this cover, which is stunning. She actually paints her own covers, and they're all her own, which I love. She actually just redid the cover for the first book in the series, which was the only one like that she hadn't painted, so they're now all in the same style. I want to own all of these. I only own the novellas so far, but I want to get her whole series because they're beautiful. But anyway, I was commenting on it being like, I can't wait. And she actually messaged me and asked if I wanted an ARC. And I was like, yes, give it to me right now. So I literally dropped everything that I was doing and read this in one sitting. And this is a enemies to lovers, but also like a one-night stand. And it's crazy. So our heroine is actually a thief. She's a retired thief, but she gets asked to do one more job, as you do. And she's a witch. She has a special power of she can see wards and find their weaknesses. So there is this mansion she's supposed to break into and steal a certain item. I think it's like a jade egg or a jade, I don't know, but it's something she needs to steal. And so she breaks in there, and it's a bad day to break in because the dragon who lives here, it's during his heat. And so he's extra cranky and extra horny, and he catches this person. He's like, I'm going to turn you in to the magical police. You are fucking with my, alone time right now, okay? Now, this dragon, he will suffer his heats forevermore because he lost his mate. His mate died. And so now he will never, fully have someone to, complete him, but he can fuck his way through a heat, which could help. So what does our heroine do? She notices the state that he's in, and she's like, hey, will you let me leave with this item if I let you fuck me through your heat? So she bargains her body with him, and she's on birth control. She's like, fine, go for it. So our double-dicked, our double-dicked dragon fucks this thief all through his heat. And then when it's over, he's like, thank you, take it, get out. Because he's like, you're trying to steal from me, which is the worst thing you can do for a dragon. But he's like, leave. And then she goes home and actually goes to see her friend, and she's pregnant. Literally the next day, they can tell she's pregnant. She's like, I was on birth control. And they're like, well, you can only get pregnant by a dragon if you're their mate. And also, you are. I can tell that you're pregnant. So all of these things, happen all at once. So she is planning to tell him. This isn't a secret baby thing. She's planning to tell him. But she's like, it's the next day. I think this is a little too fast. So, I'm just going to wait, a week, and then I'll tell him, So I was like, okay, that's fair. Because if you had heard you were pregnant the next day, you might be a little overwhelmed too, right? From a one-night stand if you knew the next day, right? This baby's a bit of a Renesmee situation. Not for the creepy looking or for the whatever, but the pregnancy is extremely accelerated because in just a week, she has already started to have a lot of symptoms. She's very sick. And the biggest one, and the one that's the most dangerous for her, is she has become extremely cold because this baby in her, being part reptile, needs heat. So it is sucking the heat from her, and she is extremely cold. So she barely even makes it a week, and she goes to see the dragon and is like, hey, number 1, your bun's in my oven. Number 2, it's killing me. I need you to help me. So first off, he's overwhelmed, and he's in denial because, again, he lost his mate. So he shouldn't be able to get this girl pregnant, and what the fuck is happening? But he knows that is true. He's just pushing it away. And also, his dragon is like a bit of a separate entity from him. So the dragon's like, that's ours, that's mine. And he's like, no, this can't be. So what they end up doing, and then what like the rest of this book is. So that's all just like the first 3 chapters. The fucking, her finding she's pregnant, and her telling him, right? That's the setup of this book, okay? The rest of the story is because of this pregnancy being, you know, number one, it's a miracle. Because that's another thing we see is like her friend does offer to help her get rid of the baby because she's like, you weren't expecting this. You were on birth control. What do you need? And what I loved, right? Because, I mean, you guys know I'm honest about this. I don't love hearing the conversation of like, should we get rid of the baby? That's my personal feelings. But I loved how the heroine reacted because she's like, yeah, I am a broke thief. I got pregnant from a one-night stand. Like, it's a dragon. Like, what is this? But she's like, but a dragon baby is a miracle. Like, it's a miracle. There's so few of them. And she's like, and she's been very lonely. She doesn't have any family. So she's like, this baby's my family. And this was a crazy situation. If I'm pregnant, like, it's meant to be. So she has all this thought. So I really liked her thought process of that, of like, this is a miracle. Like, literally, this child is a miracle. So she is there telling him she's pregnant, and he's like really overwhelmed. But she's in a lot of pain. She is freezing. And he's like, that's because you need the warmth. Since you're not a dragon, you can't regulate your temperature. So they have to do these cuddling sessions with each other where he will like lay there and just like push warmth into her body until the baby is like filled with it, and then it will let her be warm. And they need to do this like every 1 to 2 days. So then this becomes a roommate situation. So she's now moved in with him so he can be there. Now he has said like, I don't know how this happened. Like, I don't accept you as my mate. I already had a mate. I don't want it. And for her, she's like, okay, you get to choose that. But then this isn't going to be a friends with benefits things then. Like, you're here to give me what I need for the baby, but like, I'm not going to have sex with you if this doesn't mean anything to you. So this is our setup of this story. I know I've talked a whole bunch about this one, but it's so complex to me. It has so many layers, and it's so much more than just like what it appears. You know, you start this book and there's a lot of crazy fucking that happens right away. But then this is a slow burn romance, pun intended, dragon-wise. And it was so beautiful. Like, honestly, this one was really close to being a 6-star read for me. I'm just telling you. There was just a few parts of it that I was like, not sure about. There is, I don't want to spoil a certain aspect for you because it was very emotional, but there is a trigger warning, you know, for the loss of a spouse and loss of a child. You know, I always have to tell those, even though it's kind of a spoiler. Like, I need to tell you that. So yeah, I talked enough about that one. I adored that book. It was so good. All right. Then we have Hold Fast by Eliza MacArthur. I have been talking this one up for quite a few weeks now. I finally got in my physical copy when it released. This is book 1 in the Laird's Holding. And this one is about Una, who has just gotten out of a hand fasting with a horrible man where she was raped and abused the entire year that they were hand fast with each other. This is a Scottish romance, in case you don't know. Hand fasting is a thing that you could do there where you basically have a trial marriage, and at the end of it you can decide to be done. So she decides to be done with this guy. She isn't staying, so she's on her own. She then is waylaid by Ewan MacDonald, who needs a healer. She happens to be a healer. Forgot to mention that. And he begs her to come and help his brother, and she agrees. And then after he sees her skills, he's like, would you stay and be a healer for my holding? We don't have one. And the other healer had died in a recent epidemic or sickness that went through. So she agrees, as long as if she ever doesn't want to be here anymore, he'll let her go because she's tired of being trapped somewhere. And he's like, okay, all right. And they start to, stuff happens. Then when her father, who is a jackass, we don't like him, finds out that she's staying at this place, he's like, I'm taking you home. You can't live here. You're unmarried and you're living at this place. And she's like, you abandoned me to that other fucker. Like, no. But he's like, I have the rights to have you. You have to come with me. And Ewan is like, well, not if I marry her. I'm going to marry her. And Una is like, I don't want to be forced into a marriage again. Like, come on. So she offers Ewan, let's hand fast. And she's like, you just said you didn't like hand fasting. She's like, well, if it's the only way I can stay here, I'm not going to get married this quickly. Like, let's do a hand fast. So now she's into a second hand fast, and Ewan has a year and a day to convince her to stay with him. So there's lots of good healing scenes in this, but there is a lot of traumatic stuff in this one too. There is previous sexual assault. There was death of a childbirth. This is before the story starts. And then during the story, there's pregnancy, childbirth, wound stitching, and kidnapping and attempted sexual assault. So it does have the heavy stuff. But in all honesty, why I love this one so much is it reminded me of olden times historical romance, like the Scottish ones. It has that same feel to it, like this vibe to it. If you've read those books, you know, while still being a more accessible historical romance for the new people to the genre. So highly recommend. I mean, look at this, still has a good old like clinch cover to it. I can't wait for more from Eliza MacArthur. Her other series is the Soft Flannel Hank. That one I really love too. So I can't wait for more stuff from her. All right, then there was Caution to the Wind. This one was the long-awaited return of Gianna Darling. This book has been held over our heads for a very long time. I won't speak too much about this one. I know I spoke a lot about the others, but there's plenty of people who've read this one already and are loving it. And my thing with this one is that I loved it. I mean, I gave this 5 stars. I was shocked that I liked it so much because since it's been such a long time with Gianna Darling, I have reread some of her books since then, and I haven't liked them. Like, when I reread some of the books I used to love so much, I've just kind of moved past them in a way, right? Like the first book in this series, Lessons in Corruption, and some of the, like, I didn't like them as much. But I had signed up for this arc way back when, because I had read, you know, the 6th book in the series I used to like really like. And so I'd signed up for this arc, and then the week before, right, everything happened. So yeah, I was nervous about it, but I read this one over Thanksgiving as well. I actually read this the same time as like Broken Dreams and another one I'm about to share. I did a lot of work over Thanksgiving. I was proud of myself. And I don't know, I just really liked Axeman and May. And this one was a like forbidden romance with like best friend's dad, but then they were like friends to enemies to lovers, and there was so much angst in it, and I loved the slow, like it was a very slow burn for the both of them, and I think it really needed to be. And yeah, May was like kick-ass, and Axeman, like they both have so much like baggage and so much, you know, and yes, their misunderstanding is a little bit like, why did it take so long to work its way out? But I think when you have people who are like this distrustful and who've been hurt this much, it doesn't take much. And there's a big thing that happens. Like, it doesn't take much to throw everything off again. And yeah, so yeah, does it carry on a bit too long? Yeah, it did. But I still like how it played out. I really did. All right, then there was one I just finished, which was When She Loves by Gabrielle Sands. I just spoke about this in my most recent wrap-up, so I won't go into much, but this is the 4th book in the Fallen series. It's also the last one. There will be a spin-off duet coming soon, but this one is about Cleo. It's Cleo and Rafe, and it's a forced marriage, and she decides she's going to do everything she can to get him to like divorce her or leave her be, and he's determined to have her because he's enamored with her and he wants her, and he's going to do what he has to do. And I loved it. Like, she tries to like spend a bunch of his money, she's going to redecorate his house, she's going to drive him nuts and get him to, and she's denying him sex, and he's just like, I am going to prove you wrong, that I really want you. And so I loved the games that they played with each other. There also is a point where he really fucks up, and there's a really big grovel, and I liked it, so I was here for it. So yeah, 5-star read. We have the 2 books that I gave 6 stars to, which I also have talked extensively about them, so I'll try not to go on too much, but I just couldn't believe I added 2 more 6 stars like right at the end of the year to this. But let's just do it. So there's God of Fury by Rena Kent. This is the 5th book in the Legacy of the Gods. And this one was also Rena's first romance. This is the author, again, I mentioned that at the beginning of this year, way back in January, I did a vlog where I gave an author a second chance. I had a couple different prompts that I did while I read that, and I gave an author a second chance. And I had read plenty of Rena Kent's. I'd read quite a few of the parents' couples of these, because this is a second gen series, but I just wasn't into her anymore. But one of my viewers, who is a close friend at this point too, one of my patrons, she loved this series. And she never pushed these books on me because she knew I didn't like Rena Kent. So she was like, I don't want to recommend it. I don't want to recommend it. But I saw how much she was loving these books. So when there was an opportunity to give Rena a second chance, I was like, I'm going to do it. Right? So at the beginning of this year, I read God of Malice. And I loved it. Okay, I loved it. It was great. And then I binged the other two that were already out, and then I had to wait. So I read the fourth one, I think came out in like July, and this one just came out the beginning of this month. And I love the audiobook. She doesn't do arcs for her books anymore because people are thieves and have stolen stuff before, so ruined it for everybody. But what I love about that, because it isn't something that I experience too much anymore, that someone always has an arc for a book. There are rarely any books that that someone hasn't read beforehand, right? So when these books drop, it gives me that experience that I have, you know, when I get like a Sarah J. Maas book, right? Because I drop everything. I get the audiobook for it, which this one, if you're going to listen to these books, I highly recommend that you get the audios. I mean, if you're going to read these, I highly recommend that. Particularly books 4 and 5 are duet narration. So this one was Teddy Hamilton and Shane East, and they are perfection. Shane East was a narrator in the previous book because books 4 and 5 are about twin brothers, so, you know, same narrator, right? And the way he's able to be completely unique, I mean, I know he can because I've listened to hundreds of books that Shane East or Steve West has narrated, so I know that. But the way that he made these twin brothers who, when they're in scenes together, still sound so different, but like the same, I thought was just so great. But anyway, this is a like gay awakening story. This is a, you know, not even fully enemies to lovers. I mean, they're from like rival schools or whatever, but Nico is a mafia heir. He has like manic episodes, like a little bit of like probably some bipolar in there a little bit. He's a fighter. He is like rabid in a lot of situations. And Bran, he is very like buttoned up. He tries to be perfect all the time. He's an artist, but he's lost a lot of his spark. He mostly just tries to keep his twin brother and his sister out of trouble. And he's just kind of barely existing until he catches Nico's eye. And Nico just can't let go of wanting to like poke, like pick at, and like it's just, it was fabulous. Like there's not another way to say it, I don't know, because that's just the start of it. Like it just starts with like Nico has a new toy and this toy is annoyed with him picking at it, so he just keeps doing it. And he's attracted to him, but Bran's not really attracted to anyone. He's actually like asexual, but he's only been with women before. And he's like, I'm not gay. Stop hitting on me. Stop making moves on me. And Nico just won't do it. And it could feel like a bullying situation. Like a lot of books in the series like kind of are bully romances in a way. But Nico just, he can see something. He can see something. And so he just is like scratching at it and picking at it until he gets reactions. And Nico's one of the few people that gets such big reactions out of Bran. And so this book, like a lot in the series, like it takes place over a good amount of time and it's interweaving with the other stories in it. So I had quite a few people, some of you maybe, who read mostly only MM and really just want to read this as a standalone. And Rena herself, as so many authors do, say, like, you can read this as a standalone. Like, she says it. It's there. God of Fury is a complete standalone. However, when I give a book 6 stars like this particular book is 6 stars because I read the building blocks to get to it, okay? So I've had this conversation with a few of you who've messaged me about it. So yes, she has their whole story encased in here because the scenes you see of them in other books, you see them in here from their point of views, and you could just read this book. I'm not trying to shame you if you do. You could start with this book and be fine, be absolutely fine. But for me, why I love it so much, and if you want maybe the same experience that I had, it's because I've I've read the whole series and I've seen those interactions before, and you start feeling the tension and you're like, there's something more going on. And then you get to this book and it all gets laid out before you, where you're like, oh, this is what was going on. This is all the little layers that I'm seeing them all together. So I suggest you do that. And particularly, okay, if you don't want to do all that, if you're like, no, I want to read this one first, I still think you should read book 4 first, because book 4 and this one are very much interlocked, because it's Bran's twin Lan and it's Nico's younger sister Mia, and so their romance is happening the same time as this, and both couples are reacting to the other couples like getting together, and so it's this Gordian knot where like there's no like beginning to it or end to it. So yeah, maybe like you could read this first and then you could read that one if you wanted, I don't know. But most all of these stories, like they're taking, like there's one event that happens in the beginning of this book that is at the beginning of the last like 4 books. The first one starts somewhere else, but all the rest of them all start the same night. And so all these love stories like take off from the same point, you know. So anyway, it's brilliant. And I'm so glad I gave Rena another chance. And you know what? I will. There's others of her backlist that I never did try that I probably still will now. But I just can't be pressured into them because of the like, I still have a tentative relationship. But this series has garnered mad respect from me. I've given them 5, 4.5, 3, 5, 6. Like I've liked them all much more than I didn't. And this book just, besides all that I just said, like this gay awakening, this like Nico helping Bran like understand himself better, him being there to support him when he goes through some very dark things, like the trigger warnings in this one. Like Rena has a full page on them. I'll leave them for you because they are like spoilers. And she says it. She's like, if you have triggering things, read this. But if you can handle it, like just go. And since this was like release day, I was reading it on release day and I wasn't reading it as an ARC reader, because when I read books as an ARC reader, I need to know all the triggers. I need to know all of those things so that I can give a good review, right? Because when I'm reading it as an advanced reader copy, I take my reading isn't just for me, it's for you as well. But these books are like completely for me. Obviously, I'm still recommending this to you, like then I do that. But like my initial read of these is just for me. I'm not reading it to tell anyone else about it, even though I will, right? Okay. So for me, I didn't need the trigger warnings ahead of time because I was pretty sure that in a gay romance, like specific triggers I have are mostly applicable to MF relationships. So when I got to where she said, like she says this line, she says, this book is dark, and it has sensitive subjects. I'll list them below for your safety, but if you don't have any triggers, please skip the following paragraph as it will provide major plot spoilers. So I read that and then I skipped because I was like, I can handle it. And you, if you have any type of triggers, you should read that list though. And I do talk about them in my weekly wrap up if you're still like, Jen, tell me what they are. Or go to Goodreads, people have the lists all over. But yeah, this was a 6-star book. I loved it so much. God of War is like 7 months away from coming out, which I'm really sad about. I want her to move it forward, but she said she still might move it back. Like she's written it, but she's like, I have so much revising to do. So I'm like, oh, it's so far away. Because yeah, it comes out like later next year. But I can't even imagine how she's going to wrap this series up. Like it's going to be crazy. So yeah, loved it. Okay. See, this video is going to be close to an hour anyway. All right. And then the last one. The last but not least, and was another book that made it onto my 6 stars, probably the last 6-star book of the year, because I mean, stranger things have happened. I read Manacled on like the last day of the year, but then I moved that into the next year. Anyway, the very last 6-star book I have to talk about is P.S. You're Intolerable. And this book is now out. We pushed this book to like number 24 on the Amazon overall ebook list, which is just crazy. I know that meant so much to this author, but this book is a book you can read out of order. So see, I don't always say you have to read them in order. You can read this one first if you want to. I know a lot of people like read them in order. Number 1, because we like to read things in order, but number 2, because I started talking about this like 3 weeks ago, so a lot of my viewers had time to read books 1 and 2 first. which books 1 and 2 were great, but this one just blew it out of the water for me. So what's this about? Okay. This is about Charlotte. Is it Charlotte or Catherine? Jeez, why'd I say Charlotte? This book is about Catherine, who is applying for, she has an interview for a job for an assistant at Levi Holdings, I think is what it's called. But either way, Elliot Levy is Levy Holdings or something? I don't know. His business. And she has an interview with him. And she becomes his assistant. Now, she is 8 weeks pregnant when she gets this job. She hasn't told him she's pregnant. She doesn't have to tell him she's pregnant. That's not the law. You don't have to do that. And she gets a job being his assistant, and he's a tough guy to work for. He is a jerk. He is cranky. He's anal about things, but she's able to do it. But the way that she's able to bite her tongue is when she will write out his list of everything to do today, she will write, P.S., you look stupid in that shirt. She'll like write something, and then she will like cut that off and keep it as her like little rebellion. So that's where the PS in this one comes, because he just drives her crazy. Now, as this story moves along, like he doesn't realize she's pregnant for quite a while. Like he doesn't notice those things, doesn't know. This is also a plus size heroine, so she isn't like showing that she's pregnant for quite a while anyway. And it's actually one of his friends who like clues him in that like, you realize she's pregnant, right? And he's like, what? And because he tries not to pay too close attention to her, for real, because he's very attracted to her. But he only hired her as assistant because he thought she had a boyfriend, because she did at the very, very beginning. But that baby daddy blew off back to Australia very quickly and left her in a pretty dire situation with barely a roof over her head. He'd stolen money from her. And so this job is really like all that she is holding on to. And Elliot, once he finds out she's pregnant and that she's alone, he starts doing a lot of these like little things to take care of her that she doesn't know. Because again, she has a pretty like crappy view of him, even though like she's happy to have the job. Like he's a pain to work for. And when she has the baby, he has a temp working for him, and this guy is just driving him crazy. So he ends up emailing her a lot, asking for like things, and she's like, I am on maternity leave. And he's like, I know, but I like need this. And so she's only like 6 weeks into maternity leave. She still has a couple weeks to go, and he goes by her house because he like needs some information from her, and he's impatient, and also he wants to see her, but he would never admit that. And when he shows up at her house, he realizes where she's living, and this house is not in great shape. It was being remodeled, and then money ran out, and again, her boyfriend left and stole money from her, and so she only really has like her room and the baby's room and a bathroom, and the rest is all like tore up and in the midst of this stuff. And she is, you know, newly had a baby, so she's still slow moving and sore and sleep deprived. And then Elliot sees her like this. And number one, she's so ashamed that he's seeing her. But number two, she's just like embarrassed. And he never makes her feel bad for 1 second. He doesn't push any shame onto her or try to make her feel guilty. He just sees the situation and says, you need to come live with me for your baby, because this is not safe. And until you can get somewhere safer, like, you need to come stay with me. And she accepts for her baby. Her baby's name is Josephine. Joey is her nickname. And now that he has her in his house, this man goes about proving that he doesn't want her to ever leave. And I've said it before, I am a sucker for a man who loves babies who aren't his. And the way that he just completely, this stoic, stuffy, she calls him an android. He seems so emotionless. The way that he just completely welcomes her and her child in, has done all this research about how to take care of the baby. Like, he's never had a baby in his life before. He does all these things to, like, care for her without ever asking anything. And so all of this that I've mentioned, which I know I talk too much to talk you into it, but like, there's still so much for you to read. It's fine. All of what I've mentioned happens before they've ever even kissed, before he's ever even told her that he likes her, before she's ever even had a romantic thought about him. He does all of those things. He's wonderful. He's wonderful. This book is wonderful. And again, you can start with this book because the other characters in the series, you'll see them. His sister has a book. His friend has a book. There's going to be another book about a character. You'll really like him in here. But start with this one, okay? Because the other ones were okay, but I have little gripes about them. I have not a thing bad to say about this book. Not one. There's nothing that I don't like. I love all of it. And yeah, I recommend you start with this. And then if you want to read the other two, absolutely do, because they were fun. They were fun, but this was wonderful. So there you go. I managed to make this almost an hour. Those are 13 recent releases that I read. And I mean, I recommend pretty much all of them. There's links to all of them down below if you'd like to buy them. If you do use my link to purchase either an ebook or a physical book, it does help the channel out a little bit. If you would like to support the channel like my patrons and channel members do, I have links down below for that. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.